Very good morning, Friday the 7th of February 2025. My name is Raj Amir. This is one of those Recusant 9 transmissions. Every now and then something happens that leads to one of these broadcasts that are shared. And that something happens is out of the ordinary, unusual, and I think of sufficient concern, interest for me just to put a transmission out. All of my work now is shared completely for free, so I rely on the goodwill and generosity of people to support me. My aspiration really is to get my subscriber numbers up on Redwall and the Rabble. So this is the link, https, so it's redwallandtherabble.co.uk. Please, if you find value in any of this work, and there's thousands of you that view this content, and my numbers, particularly my newsletter, remain extremely, let's just say embarrassingly low. So if you find value in my work, at the very least, I mean, you can even subscribe for free if you want. So there's a subscription there. And it means you get a whole host of newsletters from me, all of my regular updates, my long form content, everything that I go through here, and you're left wondering, I wanted to know more about this, or I wanted to know more about that. That is shared through that platform, Redwall and the Rabble. So please do go and take a subscription out on there. It is completely free, and if you want to pay, you can pay me from just 75 pence a week. So that's what it looks like. But despite that, and despite plugging away at this now for well over 5 years, it's disappointing. So I'll leave that in your hands to decide whether I am of value, and the value I provide is helping us move this issue forward. Now, I want to get on to an extraordinary council meeting in Oldham next Wednesday. One's been called. Everything I have been advocating to you, I have also been doing in my own hometown, and we have what is an extraordinary council meeting on Wednesday, and I'll get to that. But I want to just take 2 steps back to understand how we got to where we have got to. I want to read this headline to you. It was in the Free Press by a guy called Dominic Green. The biggest peacetime crime and cover-up in British history. So this isn't just me saying it. This is people across the world saying this. So this is an American publication. You can see it says international. The biggest peacetime crime and cover-up in British history. And there's a picture of our Prime Minister with the Union flag behind him. I think he's in Downing Street, Keir Starmer. The serial rape of thousands of English girls went on for many years. Few in power cared. Then Elon Musk started tweeting. London. The grooming and serial rape of thousands of English girls by men of mostly Pakistani Muslim background over several decades is the biggest peacetime crime in the history of modern Europe. It went on for many years. It is still going on. And there has been no justice for the vast majority of victims. British governments, both Conservative and Labour, hoped that they had buried the story after a few symbolic prosecutions in the 2010s. And it looked like they had succeeded until Elon Musk read some of the court papers and tweeted his disgust and bafflement on X over the new year. Britain now stands shamed before the world. The public's suppressed wrath is bubbling to the surface in petitions, calls for a public inquiry, and demands for accountability. The scandal is already reshaping British politics. It's not just about the heinous nature of the crimes. It's that every level of the British system is implicated in the cover-up. Now, there's an article there. I'd like you to go and read it for yourself. At some point, it's the thefp.com, and you'll find it there by a man called Dominic Green. I'd like you to go and read that article yourself. When Elon Musk tweeted, that tweet did not come out of thin air. It came as a consequence of the British Home Secretary Yvette Cooper rejecting, sorry, not Yvette Cooper. It came as a consequence of a letter being written to Yvette Cooper from Oldham Council that we had been campaigning for the best part of 6 years. It took us 6 years, and you all need to understand how hard this is and how much of a journey we've yet to go. And I can see some of your frustrations. I've written to my councillor and they've not written back to me. We've been at this for 6 relentless years, and it's took us 6 years and removing councillor after councillor to force our council to write a letter to the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper demanding a public inquiry into the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children in Oldham. The consequence of that letter was it got delegated to a woman called Jess Phillips, MP. She has specific responsibility for safeguarding girls. It sat on her desk for 3 months before she responded with a no. She's not interested in safeguarding children this way, and the council can have its own inquiry, even though she would have been fully aware that the council already had its own inquiry via the Greater Manchester Mayor, her friend, Andy Burnham, and that was an attempt at a cover-up that we exposed as a cover-up. I published that letter on New Year's Day in the afternoon. GB News then picked up on it and published it, and Elon Musk then got involved and was outraged. So that is the sequence of events that led us here. Non-stop, relentless campaigning. And then what happened after Elon Musk got involved is this. And I'll bring it up.
Distraction tactics. Let us have the truth. The Prime Minister cannot tell the House the full scale of the scandal. He doesn't want questions asked of Labour politicians who may be complicit. Yep. He won't listen to the victims. He won't listen to the victims who are calling for a national inquiry. He is making this all about a bill this afternoon. Yeah. Later today, he will tell Labour MPs, including in Telford, Rochdale, Bristol, Derby, Aylesbury, Oldham, Bradford, Peterborough, Coventry, Middlesbrough, Newcastle, Ramsgate, tell all of these people to vote against a national inquiry into the gangs which have systematically gang raped children in their constituencies. This is one of the worst scandals in British history, Mr. Speaker.
So that then happened in the House of Commons, and the Labour Party government voted against a public inquiry into the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of the nation's children. Sat next to Keir Starmer is a woman called Angela Rayner. She's the Deputy Prime Minister. Angela Rayner, as we have exposed, has her name attached to, on Commons letter-headed paper, attempting to shut down the investigation in Oldham and confirming that Andy Burnham's inquiry in the town, assurance review in the town, was fit for purpose. Of course, now it's proven that it isn't. So what we've got is the Deputy Prime Minister involved in the cover-up. And that's why she's shaking her head like this, sat next to Keir Starmer, when Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, made specific reference to the incrimination of senior Labour Party politicians. Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, is one of them. And that's before we get to Keir Starmer and what his role may or may not have been whilst he was in charge of the Crown Prosecution Service. Remember, it's a matter of public record, he's already apologised in his capacity whilst there for failings. Kemi Badenoch made reference to Pakistani heritage men. The article published by the Free Press internationally, gone across the world, made reference to Pakistani heritage men. The biggest peacetime crime and cover-up in British history. Second line of the first sentence. The grooming and serial rape of thousands of English girls by men of mostly Pakistani Muslim background. So there's the ethnicity and there's also the religion, Pakistani Muslim background. I don't think anyone is disputing or doubting what needs to be investigated. Do you? So at the last council meeting in Oldham, the Conservative interim leader, an elderly lady called Pam Byrne, who ordinarily wouldn't say boo to a goose, in every circumstance prior to this I've seen in the council, the Labour Party are quite happy to pander to her and encourage her and support her. She stood up and said this.
At the debate we had when we had Mayor Burnham, we had the then GMP lead, and we started our progress down this road of the child sexual abuse. Now, I'd like to ask the leader of the council, Councillor Shah, if you will confirm whether you would support the following. You've covered quite a bit of the area, but this is more specific. It's quite short. Will she support our call for a national inquiry, which we've always called for, the Pakistani heritage rape gangs who have groomed children, not just in Oldham, but in the whole of the UK? Will she confirm the timeline?
Mr Deputy Mayor, Mr Deputy Mayor, Mr Deputy Mayor, I think Councillor Byrne,
Sit down. You
could
are
I,
not
Mr Councillor,
Councillor Shah, can you sit down 1 minute? Councillor Byrne, I think specifically saying what you've just said was not.
Can I just carry on with...
Councillor Quigg, do not interrupt me again, please. Thank you. Councillor Quigg, be silent. Thank you.
Can she confirm that the timeline for the local inquiry into the historic cases...
Absolutely, Mr Mayor. If you want to withdraw that remark. That's not a problem at all.
Right, can we...
Confirm
excuse me. I will not accept that comment about the Pakistani gangs. I don't think that's appropriate.
If you wish me to withdraw that, I will withdraw that. But it has been said nationally.
It's got to be a wider inquiry than that.
Right, no. Can she confirm the timeline for the local inquiry into the historic cases of child sexual exploitation in Oldham? And can she confirm that the inquiry in Oldham does not exclude any council officers, councillors or members of the council who were and are still employed by the council? Will the leader of the council demand that the Prime Minister apologise for claiming that those fighting for justice are far right, but are instead trying to do the right thing to get justice? Thank you, Mr Deputy.
Thank you, Councillor Shah.
once again, Mr Deputy Mayor, I'm going to apologise to the survivors who made their statements at the start of this meeting. I think it's really unacceptable that we keep drawing this out and trying to use it politically. It's unfair, it's disrespectful. The only voice that matters is theirs, and they've made it clear. They don't want to hear from me, they don't want to hear from anyone else, and they don't want anyone to try to politically point score.
So, what you saw there was Councillor Pamburn being shouted down, first of all by the Pakistani gangster-endorsed leader of Oldham Council, Arood Shah. And for those of you who are from different parts of the world listening in, you heard me right, Pakistani gangster-endorsed leader of Oldham Council, Arood Shah. She's endorsed by Pakistani gangsters. She hangs off the arm of a convicted heroin dealer, and her brother is a convicted money launderer, and she parties late at night wearing a red Labour Party rosette with a man called Zia Hussain, who kidnapped and tortured a couple of young men, and when the police turned up they found blood splattered all over the walls. That is who the leader of Oldham Council is, Arood Shah. She is also the chair of the National Constitutional Committee of the Labour Party. So that's how powerful she also is. And she is the Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham's Equalities lead. You should be shocked. So, Pamburn is shouted down, and the Mayor wants her to remove the word Pakistani. He wants her to remove the word Pakistani. And then Arood Shah is shouting and screaming about playing politics. She doesn't want to play politics. Well, it's a council chamber. It's a place of politics. That's where you do politics, in the council chamber. So as a consequence of that exchange in the council chamber, it became very clear to the Conservative opposition, who have been leading this in the council. I'm not a Conservative, and they've gone up against their own party at a national level in government who they disagreed with. Because remember, the National Conservative government failed us on this. They had every opportunity to launch a national inquiry and they failed us on this. So as a consequence of that interaction, it became very clear to every Conservative that Yvette Cooper's local inquiry would be another sham. I mean, it was restricted from the beginning. It's not a Telford-style inquiry because it only has £1 million to do its work when Telford had £8 million and still failed to do its work. It's also not independent because the council are involved, where the Telford-style inquiry had a layer of independence because of the process it went through to guarantee independence. The terms of reference, the council are already trying to set them, and as you could hear Arood Shah at the end, she is already duping some of the survivors, a handful, and trying to use them to say, we can't speak out against what's going on. Well, we speak on behalf of everyone, not just the ones that the council are trying to pander to and work with. And remember, the vast majority of those who were abused, tortured, gang raped have not come forward, and did not come forward because they do not trust the system as a consequence of the direct experiences of what happened to them when they did come forward. Let me bring something else up now. I want you to listen to Yvette Cooper before we move on.
We come to the statement. I would like to remind the House that on issues which may relate to ongoing cases relating to vulnerable children, members will wish to take care to avoid saying anything that could prejudice any cases that are currently before the courts or which might come before the courts at a later date. Statement, Secretary Yvette Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last Monday, I set out the actions this government is taking forward to tackle the terrible crimes of child sexual exploitation and abuse, including mandatory reporting, a new victims and survivors panel, an overhaul of data and police performance requirements, tougher sentences for perpetrators, and support for local inquiries, including in Oldham. The Safeguarding Minister is this morning meeting with survivors from Oldham, and earlier this week she and I met Professor Alexis Jay, who chaired both the 7-year National Independent Inquiry into child sexual abuse and the first local independent inquiry into grooming gangs in Rotherham. Professor Jay's strongest message to us was that the survivors who bravely testified to terrible crimes committed against them must not be left to feel that their efforts were in vain, because despite all the inquiries, no one listened and nothing was done. So following those discussions, I therefore want to update the House on our next steps, both to take forward inquiry recommendations and to go further in tackling sexual exploitation and grooming on the streets and online to keep children safe. The Independent National Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse completed its final report in 2022. It took 7 years, heard 7,000 personal testimonies and considered 2 million pages of evidence. They were devastating accounts of brutal rapes, sexual violence, humiliation, trauma, betrayal of vulnerable children by those charged with protecting them, and people in positions of power who shamefully put the reputation of institutions before the protection of children. The inquiry included separate detailed reports on organised child abuse in residential homes and schools, abuse and cover-ups in the Catholic and Anglican churches, and a 2-year inquiry published in February 2022 into child sexual exploitation by organised networks and grooming gangs, which itself examined over 400 recommendations made by previous inquiries and serious case reviews, as well as taking further evidence of its own. And there have been further reports since then, including on Telford and on police performance. But despite all those national inquiries, reports, and hundreds of recommendations, far too little action has been taken, and shamefully little progress has been made. That has to change. So before Easter, the government will lay out a clear timetable for taking forward the 20 recommendations from the final ICSA inquiry report. 4 of those are specifically for the Home Office, and I can confirm we have accepted them in full, including on disclosure and barring, and work on these is already underway. A cross-government ministerial group is considering and working through remaining recommendations, and that group will be supported by our new Victims and Survivors panel. In addition, I can confirm today that the Government will implement all the remaining recommendations in the Child Abuse Inquiry's separate standalone report on grooming gangs from February 22, including updating key Department Education guidance. So let me turn to the areas where we need to go further. As I said last week, the most important task should be to increase police investigations into these horrific crimes and get abusers behind bars. We will introduce stronger sentences for child grooming, making it an aggravating factor to organise abuse and exploitation. And I can announce new action today to help victims get more investigations and prosecutions underway. I'm extending the remit of the Independent Child Sexual Abuse Review Panel, so it covers not just historic cases before 2013, but all cases since, so that any victim of abuse will have the right to seek an independent review without having to go back to the local institutions who decided not to proceed with their case. I'm writing today to the National Police Chiefs Council to ask all Chief Constables to look again at historic gang exploitation cases where no further action was taken, and to work with the Police Child Sexual Exploitation Task Force to pursue new lines of inquiry and reopen investigations where appropriate. And these new measures will be backed by £2 million additional funding for the task force and the panel. And all police forces will be expected to implement the 2023 recommendations from His Majesty's Inspectorate, including producing problem profiles on the nature of grooming gangs in their area, and I have asked the Inspectorate to review progress this year. But as well as reviewing past cases, we also need much stronger action to uncover the full scale and nature of these awful crimes. The Child Sexual Exploitation Police Task Force, led by the National Police Chiefs Council, has estimated that out of the 115,000 child sexual abuse offences recorded by the police in 2023, around 4,000 involved more than one perpetrator. Of those, they identify around 1,100 that involved abuse within the family, over 300 involving abuse in institutions, and they identified 717 reported cases of group or gang-related child sexual exploitation. But we know the vast majority of abuse goes unreported, so we expect all of those figures to be a significant underestimate. The task force reports there are currently 127 major police investigations underway on child sexual exploitation and gang grooming across 29 different police forces. Many major investigations have involved Pakistani heritage gangs, and the police task force evidence also shows exploitation and abuse taking place across many different communities and ethnicities. But the data on ethnicity of both perpetrators and victims is still inadequate. As I said last week, we will overhaul the data we expect local areas to collect as part of a new performance management framework. But I've also asked the Child Sexual Exploitation Task Force to immediately expand the ethnicity data it collects and publishes, gathering data from the end of the investigation when a fuller picture is available, not just from the beginning when suspects may not yet have been identified. But in order to go much further, I have asked Baroness Louise Casey to oversee a rapid audit of the current scale and nature of gang-based exploitation across the country and to make recommendations on the further work that is needed. The specific 2022 ICSA report, Child Sexual Independent Inquiry report on gang exploitation, concluded that an accurate picture of the prevalence of child sexual exploitation could not be gleaned from the data and evidence that it had available. So this audit will seek to fill that gap. It will look at further evidence that was not previously available, including that collected by the Police Task Force and including the new problem profiles compiled by police forces, and it will include an equivalent audit of child protection referrals. It will properly examine ethnicity data and the demographics of the gangs involved and their victims, and will look at the cultural and societal drivers for this type of offending, including amongst different ethnic groups. And it will make recommendations about further analysis, investigations and actions that are needed to address current and historic failures. Baroness Louise Casey was the author of the No Holds Barred 2015 report into child sexual exploitation in Rotherham, and I have therefore asked her to oversee this rapid 3-month audit ahead of the launch of the Independent Commission into Adult Social Care. In many areas across the country, the focus must now be on further police investigations and implementing recommendations to improve services. But we will also provide stronger national backing for local inquiries where they are needed to get truth and justice for victims and survivors. The Prime Minister and I both met last week with survivors from Telford, who had enormous praise for the way that that local inquiry was conducted after there had been failings over very many years. And that inquiry led to tangible change, including piloting the introduction of CCTV in taxis, appointing child sexual exploitation experts in local secondary schools. And as we've seen, effective local inquiries can delve into far more local detail and deliver more locally relevant answers and change than a lengthy nationwide inquiry can provide. So Tom Crowther, KC, chair of the Telford inquiry, has agreed to work with the government to develop a new framework for victim-centred, locally led inquiries where they are needed, and as a first step, to work with Oldham Council and up to 4 other pilot areas. That will also include support for local authorities who want to explore other ways to support victims, including local panels or drawing on the experience of the Independent Inquiry Truth Project. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Government is already drawing up a duty of candour as part of the long-awaited Hillsborough Law. So we will also work with mayors and local councils to now bolster the accountability mechanisms that can support and follow up local inquiries to ensure that those who are complicit in cover-ups or to try to resist scrutiny are always robustly held to account and truth and justice are never denied. This new package of national support for local inquiries will be backed by £5 million of additional funding to get further local work off the ground, because at every level, getting justice for victims and protecting children is a responsibility we all share. And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, we cannot ignore the way in which child exploitation is changing as offenders exploit new technology to target and groom children, and we should all be deeply worried about the pace and growth of exploitation that begins online. We're therefore bolstering the work of the Home Office-funded undercover online network of police officers to target online offenders and developing cutting-edge AI tools and other new capabilities to infiltrate live streams and chat rooms where children are being groomed. And further measures will be announced in the Crime and Policing Bill to tackle those organising online sex abuse. Madam Deputy Speaker, nothing matters more than the safety of our children. Yet for too long, this horrific abuse was allowed to continue. Victims were ignored, perpetrators were left unpunished, and too many people looked the other way. And even when these shocking crimes were brought to light and national inquiries were commissioned to get to the truth, the resulting reports were too often left on the shelf as their recommendations gathered dust. So under this government, that has changed. We are taking action not just on those recommendations, but on the additional work we need to protect victims, put perpetrators behind bars, and to uncover the truth wherever things have gone wrong. This is about the protection of children, the protection of young girls, and the radical and ambitious mission we have set for this government to halve violence against women and girls in a decade. And I hope all ministers will support that mission and support the measures we have outlined today to help achieve it. I commend this statement to the House.
That was Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary. That statement only emerged because it was forced. You all need to understand this. It was forced. And what we forced from her was an acknowledgement, first and foremost, that it isn't an either or, which is what the government was saying. The ICSA recommendations, which had nothing to do with the Pakistani rape gangs, need to be implemented, and we can't investigate the Pakistani rape gangs at the same time. And now what she's saying is that the Pakistani rape gangs can be investigated, but she doesn't know how many there are. She makes reference to 127 investigations underway into the grooming gangs, and many of these investigations, and it's her own words, Pakistani heritage gangs. Her own words, not mine. So the term Pakistani is clearly referenced multiple times in the Houses of Parliament and in this context around the rape gangs. And she has these 5 local inquiries, and Oldham is the only one named, and Oldham is the only one named because of what we've done. Relentless campaigning. But we don't want an Oldham inquiry, because we know the inquiry she's commissioned by Tom Crowther, KC, is set up to fail. It's got £1 million, when the Telford inquiry that she references Tom Crowther with had £8 million, and also Tom Crowther himself acknowledged after doing the Telford inquiry with £8 million, he did not have the statutory powers that a national inquiry would have. She also makes reference to national inquiries gathering dust on the shelves. There has never been a national inquiry or any form of public inquiry into the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of working-class white girls by Pakistani heritage rape gangs. Never. And if we go off that article I shared with you right from the beginning, it says the biggest peacetime crime and cover-up in British history. So she's dodging all of that. Now, these are moves on a chessboard. And I'm sorry, I have no other way of articulating this. It's not a game. Of course it's not a game. But these are moves as if on the chessboard. And the move we then made from Oldham, because you can see no one else is doing this. I'm sorry, no one else is doing this. You're passing the odd motion, maybe the vote, but no one else across the country is doing this work. So we'll do the work, and we'll set out the template for everyone else to follow. So what we did was, first of all, set up what happened in the council chamber, where we demonstrated to the world that Oldham Council cannot be trusted to investigate itself, because it won't even allow the word Pakistani to be used. That didn't happen by accident. Councillor Lewis Quigg wrote that speech for Pam Byrne. Councillor Lewis Quigg was then sanctioned by Eddie Moores in that very meeting. You can hear him having to apologise, because he told Arooj Shah to shut up and sit down, because it wasn't her place to speak. And because of that, every Conservative then put their name to a motion at an extraordinary council meeting. And I'll bring this up for you. Please, if you are finding value in this and the work I do, and there's over 1,000 of you here right now on a Friday afternoon, please support me. Please take out a subscription to Red Wall and the Rabble. It's 75 pence a week. No one else is going to do this work for you people. You need to accept this. And for those of you who want to rant about Islam, rant away. Carry on ranting. It's never got you anywhere, and it'll never get you anywhere. Displaying extreme prejudice against those who've committed violence as a result of extreme prejudice will not get us to where we need to go. And I'm not interested in any of you who want to pursue that. I'm very clear on my position. I want to live in a town where the vast majority of people, I want to live in a country where the vast majority of people who want to live together can live together. And those who don't, on whichever extreme they belong to, can go somewhere else. This is the link to Red Wall and the Rabble. I was hoping for 10 people to sign up from the 1,066 of you. So a percentage, if that. Not even that, is it? And if you can't commit, this is the link where you can support me with just a one-off buying me a coffee for a couple of pounds. No one else is going to do this work for you. This is the agenda for next Wednesday. It's an extraordinary council meeting, and the motion is as follows. Request for a national public inquiry that investigates the scourge of child sexual exploitation. Motion to be moved by Councillor Quigg and seconded by Councillor Arnott. That's Dave Arnott, ex-army man. We humbly request that this council call upon His Majesty's government to initiate a national public inquiry that investigates the scourge of child sexual exploitation by rape gangs, both historic and current, in the metropolitan borough of Oldham, but also across the whole of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We request that a full national public inquiry is held urgently, as villages, towns and cities up and down the spine of the country have been affected by child sexual exploitation, which was carried out by evil rape gangs on an unprecedented scale. This council notes that. So these are the facts on the ground. These are the facts on the ground. The employment by Oldham Metropolitan Borough Council of the ringleader of the Rochdale rape gang, which was stated in the 2022 Assurance Review, quote, offender A worked for Oldham Council between 1988 and 2006, that's 18 years. He was employed as a welfare rights officer in the welfare rights unit of the council, seconded to the Oldham Pakistani Community Centre. In May 2012, he was found guilty of 2 rapes, aiding and abetting rape, sexual assault and trafficking for the purposes of sexual exploitation, and sentenced to 19 years imprisonment. In June 2012, he was found guilty of a further 30 rapes, charged with rape charges, and was jailed for an additional 22 years. Offender A lived in Oldham and was a member of the Oldham Labour Party. Facts on the ground. We believe there were serious failings in how both the council and Greater Manchester Police investigated concerns in respect of Shabir Ahmed. That's who offender A was, the ringleader of the Rochdale grooming gang. Fact on the ground number 2, that this council voted down multiple requests from 2020 to 2024 for inquiries of different kinds until it agreed to hold a non-statutory local inquiry in July 2024 following the council falling into no overall control. So the fact on the ground there is that the council have been dragged here kicking and screaming. It's not something that they've willingly done. That no council officer who worked or currently works at Oldham Metropolitan Borough Council have been disciplined or lost their job for professional failures in protecting children from rape gangs and child sexual exploitation to date. It actually gets worse. The interim chief executive of Oldham Council is a woman called Shelley Kipling. They tried to give her the job properly, and then, in a backhanded way, and they got called out, and now they're having to advertise an interview. The interviews are on next week, next Thursday. Shelley Kipling is one of those shortlisted for the job, even though she does not have the required skills or experiences to operate there. The reason why she's there is because she's Arooj Shah's best buddy. Shelley Kipling worked in the communications team under a man called Carl Marsden when the grooming gangs were at the height in Oldham. Shelley Kipling worked in the communications team that helped hide the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our children. She is now the interim chief executive and looks like she's going to be made the permanent chief executive. So forget prosecuting these people. They are being promoted to the highest level of public office in our town. That at the reconvened Oldham Council meeting on the 20th of January 2025, that the chairman of the council meeting sanctioned a Conservative councillor and asked her to withdraw her remarks for using the term Pakistani heritage rape gangs when asking if the council leader would support a national inquiry. Note the comments made by the Home Secretary, the Right Honourable Yvette Cooper, which is noted in Hansard, quote, 10 years ago, 2 reports by Alexis J. and Louise Casey in Rotherham found that 1,400 children had been sexually exploited, raped by multiple perpetrators, trafficked across other towns, abducted, beaten and threatened with guns. Children had even been doused in petrol. To my American friends who listen in, this is all true. Children had even been doused in petrol. Girls as young as 11 had been raped. Can't arrest me for this. This is quoted in Hansard from the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. Girls as young as 11 had been raped. Those reports a decade ago identified a failure to confront Pakistani heritage gangs and the widespread perception that they should downplay the ethnic dimensions for fear of being seen to be racist. When those reports came out, those failings in Rotherham were condemned across the board by both government and opposition in this House. As I said at the time, it is never an excuse to use race and ethnicity or community relations as an excuse not to investigate and punish sex offenders. Matter of public record. It notes another matter of public record, facts on the ground, the comments made by the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Phillip, and I don't need to read all of that, but again he makes reference to Pakistani heritage, predominantly of Pakistani heritage. And the last fact of the ground, that for too long governments of all colours have rejected this much needed national inquiry. It is time to hear from the survivors and victims who have been affected and to expose those organisations, individuals and institutions that's either covered it up, colluded in this scandal or stood by and did nothing. This council resolves to write to the Home Office to demand that His Majesty initiate without any further delay a national public inquiry into the scourge of child sexual exploitation by rape gangs, both historic and current, in Oldham, Greater Manchester and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Every councillor in Oldham next week, next Wednesday, will be attending an extraordinary council meeting, apart from the cowards who will be running away and not turning up because they don't want you to see how they vote. The vote will be recorded and the option is very clear. We know a local inquiry. The Home Office, Yvette Cooper, has identified Oldham as spearheading this work. We are here to finish it before it even gets legs. We do not want a local inquiry. No one in the country wants a local inquiry. We want a national inquiry with statutory powers. Do you know what's happening? Before the meeting on Wednesday, there's a chance to amend this motion. I'm already hearing that the Pakistanis on Oldham Council don't like that the Pakistani rape gangs are going to be investigated, or we want them to be investigated. Maybe the cousins of theirs, brothers, dads, uncles, I don't know. What I do know is that there are serving Pakistani councillors and a Bangladeshi councillor or two, serving councillors in that council chamber who were mates with Daddy. That's right, they were mates with Shabir Ahmed. They want to take out the word Pakistani. They want to rewrite this so that the inquiry shifts focus away from what is really taking place. And again, so we're clear on what is taking place. The biggest peacetime crime and cover-up in British history. Arood Shah and her mates do not want this investigating. They've never wanted this investigating. Time after time after time, they've voted against this. And they thought they had us trapped. Well, we've been fighting for a long time now. And that vote will take place next Wednesday. Let them bring their motions. Let them bring their amendments. And I'll share with you and shame any councillor who puts their name to an amendment to try and scupper a vote to say we want a national inquiry into the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our nation's children. I will name and shame every single politician who dares amend a motion on this. So if you're one of those white councillors who want to prop this up on behalf of some of your Pakistani mates, maybe you'll get a samosa in exchange. I will name you, I will expose you, and tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people across the world will know you for who you are. This is my promise to any councillor who tries to intervene in what we are doing in Oldham. This vote will take place next Wednesday, and they will either vote for it or they will carry the shame that they were involved in this, the biggest peacetime crime and cover-up in British history. And once we get over the line on Wednesday, for those of you elsewhere who are struggling with this, I will come to your towns, I will come to your cities and sit with the councillors who want to get this over the line, stop the cover-up from continuing, and I will help them draft motions and I will help them take it to their own councils so that an identical vote takes place. What I do is only possible with your support. And if you believe someone else is going to do this or has done this, then show me. Go and show me. No one. Because this is politics, and I have made it political. Because the solution to this is in the council chamber. The solution to this is in Parliament, where we force them to pass laws. They will be dragged there kicking and screaming, every last one of them. For those of you who are new to me, my name is Raja Mir. It is right I have an MBE. I was awarded it by the time I was 30 years old. I have a 25-year career in protecting children and safeguarding communities from extremists. I come to this from a place of experience, expertise, and in the end, I find myself back in my hometown, not just fighting for my children, but fighting for children across this entire nation. The work I do is only possible with your support. No one pays me. In fact, I will never work again because of what I've done, which is refuse to look the other way to the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children. At the beginning of this transmission, my aspiration is that maybe 10 people a day sign up to Red Wall and the Rabble, the newsletter. Take out a free subscription, take out a paid subscription, I don't care. Hopefully you'll take out a paid subscription. It's only 75 pence a week even. We need numbers. We need people to stand with us. And you need to understand. It took us 6 years to get here. And I'll be honest with you. The likelihood is it will take us all the way to the next general election to get us over the line. And I believe a pledge from either Reform or the Conservatives to act on this. I do not belong to any political group. I support all of them. Well, apart from the Labour Party, although the Labour Party is the only party I've ever been a member of. I will be back on Sunday. I'll continue to share updates today and on Saturday, and I'll come back on Sunday night. Please, we're in this together, and together we'll get to the end of this. But you need to help me to keep going. Thank you.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.